Hey guys, happy Wednesday. I'm just gonna wait for one person to hop on. If you're watching the replay, I have a lot of people that ask me the question of how do I know if homeschool is right for me? And so I wanted to kind of just come on and be real and raw because homeschool, as awesome as it is, it definitely has its cons. Okay. There are lots of amazing things about homeschooling. And then there are lots of things that, quite honestly, I feel like people just don't talk about. I don't know if they don't talk about it because they feel guilty or I'm not sure. But I figured I would hop on. So if you are hopping on, drop me down a comment. Let me know where you are watching from. I literally just made a list of pros and cons. So I have 5 things that are just big reasons why you should not homeschool your kid. And I don't think that for me personally, I'm just going to kind of tell you my homeschool experience and why we chose to homeschool. Because up until this past year, I was avidly against homeschooling. And the reason being is I am oh my gosh, I can't even talk. I am a product of homeschooling done wrong, meaning I dropped out of public school at 7th grade in order to quote unquote homeschool so I could work full time and help pay bills. Now, our family situation was very unique, so I don't hold that against anybody. However, most of my homeschooling was spent copying answers from the book to the answer key and sending it off to the company so I could get my quote unquote diploma, right? So it just wasn't a good experience. And I knew a lot of friends who were homeschooled and they literally just sat in front of videos all day or they cheated just like I did. So homeschooling was kind of a big joke. And I didn't know any parents who were actually like sitting down and teaching their kids. So for me, I looked at homeschooling as this crazy thing that Christians did because they didn't want their kids interacting with normal kids. So they homeschooled them, not knowing their kids were sneaking out at night, partying with the public school kids anyways. Okay. Then I got to college and met so many homeschool kids that had no idea how to interact with anybody, adults, other peers their age, nothing. So again, very against homeschooling. And then I grew up and I became an adult and I saw friends who were older than me that had older kids and they homeschooled their kids by sitting in front of a video. I had friends with teenagers who would pop the video in and leave and go to work all day and their teenagers would homeschool themselves, much like I did when I was a kid. So I really did not have a good outlook at homeschooling at all. So again, I'm very, very against homeschooling. Was not going to do it. I will say, and this is my personal opinion, I am very against the unschooling movement where you just let your kid learn when they want to learn and whatever. Inspired learning and unschooling are different. You know, you may identify with one and really be the other, but yeah. So I will just say I'm not for that at all. It needs structure. It needs, you need to be a teacher, not just, I don't want to deal with this, so my kid's going to learn what they want to learn when they want to learn it. So yeah, so very against it. So a friend of mine started homeschooling her daughter, who's a year older than mine. And I remember her, she brought some stuff to church. I think our husbands were in a staff meeting together. I don't know. We had some time before church. At this point, I was about 2 years into my business. So I would sit for that hour and I would work. And she was sitting there and she was making these cool things for her lessons for her daughter. And I'm like, that doesn't look like a video that you're popping in. Because in my mind, that's what homeschooling was. You just copied answers if you were a teenager or your parents set you in front of the television if you were a kid. And so we kind of started talking and that was about 6 months before I decided to homeschool. Because again, that was not something that I was for. So I want to use this video to kind of educate some of you guys also that maybe don't have kids or your kids are little and you're like, oh no, I wouldn't homeschool. That's Like, I want my kids to have a good education, right? You can have just as good of a homeschool education as you can a public school education, if not better. And I'm going to tell you why. But there are some red flags that homeschooling is not for you. And it doesn't have to be for everybody. There are amazing schools out there that will give your kids awesome educations. So the first thing I want to say is, if you are looking into homeschooling, you need to ask yourself, are you running from something? Are you looking into homeschooling because you're trying to like run away from something? Or are you running towards something? If you just want to homeschool because you think it's easier than having to get up and get your kid on a bus every day, probably not for you. If you're wanting to homeschool because maybe your kid is showing some signs of early learning disabilities and you want to really like tailor lessons to them and make sure that they're getting really good one-on-one time, it may be for you. It's something you can look into. So there's, your why needs to be strong too. So maybe like listen to the video before you bash it. I'm just going to say, anyways, I love when people get on and they have no idea what they're talking about. So I kind of talked to her one day about homeschooling and I was like, it's great that you're doing it, but I don't think I would ever do it. And I came to the realization that the reason I didn't want to do it is because I was afraid of failing, because I had seen it done wrong so many times and I did not want that for my daughter. So what I did is we were going to put her in preschool. Her birthday fell like a week before the cutoff date, or a week after the cutoff date, I guess. So a week after the cutoff date, and hater. So a week after the cutoff date. And so I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm going to homeschool her just for preschool, because it's preschool, right? Like, she's just turning 4. If I screw it up, then like we'll just start over and she'll go to kindergarten. However, if we like it and I can figure out how to like do it, then maybe we'll actually look into homeschooling as something we want to do. So it was definitely, I don't want to say by accident, because I don't believe that God works anything by accident. It was definitely a like God designed thing, but it wasn't my plan. Not at all. So we ended up loving it. And if you stay until the end of the video, I will send you the resource that I use, because it is, if you're kind of not sure about homeschooling and you want something that is very inexpensive to kind of try, I would highly suggest using what we used. And I'll send you a free resource too, because some of you guys just need to sit down and do it for a couple weeks during the summer, and it might be for you. However, if it's not, then there's no shame in that. Like, there are lots and lots of good schools. So the 5 cons I'm going to give you to homeschooling, and we've done it for a year now, so definitely not pros by any means. Lots of things are going to change, but there are several things that kind of jumped out during this past year that I was like, dang, like no one talks about this side of homeschooling. Like, this sucks, until you get the hang of it. Okay, so the first thing is you don't have a schedule. And you might think, okay, Tanya, like that sounds good. No, it's not good, because here's the thing. There's no one telling me I have to wake up and teach my kid. So if I wake up kind of feeling crappy, it's so much easier to sit in front of a dang television or just like let the TV babysit my kid all day. On the flip side, there are days that she doesn't feel like doing school, and we'll talk that a little bit more often, or a little bit later. But the first reason is that there's no schedule. That honestly is a pro and a con, so I'm going to talk about the pros in a little bit. But that's my first con, is there's no schedule. So just like when I retired myself from corporate and started working this social media business full time that I do, I thought, man, it's going to be so much easier. Like, the money's just going to double and triple because now I can do it full time. Yeah, no, I just watch Netflix a lot more. Like, I sucked at running my own schedule. So when you start homeschooling your kid, you run into the exact same issue. It's very hard to run your own schedule. You have to like be very diligent with your time. So if you're someone who you're not good at running your own schedule and you're not good at time management, I won't say that homeschooling is not for you. I would say you need to be teachable and you need to be open to learning time management skills, because it's a skill. Like, it's something that everybody can learn. I don't believe that time management is something that you either have or you don't. And I also don't believe it's something that you, like, oh, look, I've arrived at time management. It's something that you continuously learn. So that's good news, in my opinion, for everybody, because like, you can learn it. It's not something you're born with. It's not a talent. So it's something that you can learn. The second thing is money. Now, in Indiana, we actually have a free homeschool program if your child's old enough for kindergarten or older. So that eliminates some of it. But, and I think in Indiana, actually, homeschooling is now a tax write-off too. I know not in all states. However, it's not cheap. It's not free usually either. And it takes put it this way, even if you don't have to pay for your curriculum, you've got to be able to stay home with your kid. So if you're somebody who your family relies on 2 incomes, like, you have to go down to the 1 income to be able to homeschool your kid. And I realize that's not the norm. Most people looking at homeschooling, they are, they already only have 1 income because they're stay-at-home moms. If you're like me, and one reason I was so adamant against homeschooling is because I just never thought it would be an option. We never had the money. When I started up this little business and it kind of like bloomed into more than I thought it would be, we took care of the money situation. Like, now I could afford to homeschool my kid, but at the same time, like, now the time factor, which translates into money, right? So back to when I was having this conversation, and I think most people who are like so against homeschooling, there's an underlying issue. Now, again, money plays a part, but you can always make more money. Like, if you're willing to think outside the box with today's day and age and technology, like, I prove that for my family, you can always make more money. Like, there's no limit to the amount of money you can make. However, there is a limit to the amount of time. So for me, I was telling her, I was like, you know what? I just don't think I could do it. I don't have the time. You know, I work a lot. And then the real issue came out. I don't feel like I could teach her well enough. And she said, I don't remember her exact words, but it literally was something to the effect of, you know, it's not our job to be perfect and know what the outcome is. Our job is to go forth and put the effort and then trust God to be able to, like, deliver to our kids what they actually need for their life. And I was like, man, why'd you have to say that? Because now I'm going to, like, have to school my kid and it's going to take a lot of time. But no, all kidding aside, like, we literally love it, but I'm just being real with you guys. Like, it does take money, and that's something that you have to be willing to sacrifice if you want to homeschool. Now, again, don't look at it as like you have to sacrifice and be broke. You may have to sacrifice and think outside the box like we did and go find a way to make a full-time income without leaving your house. So it's something that is doable, but it's definitely something that's not comfortable. Number 3 is the lots of time factor, and we kind of already covered that. If you're going to do it right, you are not sitting your kid in front of a television and letting a video teach them. You are actually teaching them. And that's something that, quite frankly, not a lot of moms want to do. We live in a generation where moms are, you know, voicing how they're so busy and they don't have time for anything anyways. And then you throw being a teacher at them and it's like, oh no, I'm not going to do that. And again, that is up to you. Like, I am not bashing anybody who decides they don't want to homeschool. It is freaking hard. However, I do think it's a great option honestly, I think it's a great option for everybody if you're willing to do it. But I would rather see a kid go to public school and learn nothing about the Bible. You teach them the Bible at home. They get it at church. Like, me personally, school's primary focus does not have to be the Bible to be a good education. But if you send your kid to public school, you have to be that much more on top of making sure they know biblical principles, because I can guarantee somebody else is teaching them the opposite. Even if it's not their teacher, there are lots of good teachers. Doesn't mean there's not a kid in their class that's telling them, you know, Jesus is fake and the Bible's not real. So yeah, I don't think homeschooling. I think homeschooling is a great option for everybody. I don't think it's the only option for everybody. So the 4th thing is you have to be a jack of all trades. At a school, they have a teacher for every subject. Now, I'm a green personality, meaning I love information. So the first thing I thought about when I thought about homeschooling my 4-year-old was, I don't know, calculus or biology, or like, I'm a freaking 7th grade dropout, basically, right? Like, I cheated my way through all the other subjects, all the other grades. I don't know any of that stuff. So, most people don't think about that with their preschooler. But the reality of it is, when you get up to high school, maybe you're somebody who you can't spell worth a darn. And now your kid's having to like do English 102 and college level English and stuff because they just happen to be really good at it. So that's like their natural progression. You either have to be willing to learn it, which isn't always an option, or you have to be willing to find someone who does know it. So that goes back to the money factor. We already know when Glory gets to a certain grade level or a certain level in history, science, certain parts of math. I'm really good at math and English, but I would say basic math up through like probably algebra 1 and 2. You throw like calculus, trigonometry, any of that stuff at me, and I have no idea. So we're going to be spending a lot of money on tutors. And we already know that, and we're okay with that. So if you, again, that comes back to the money. There are so many ways to make full-time money at home that I'm not even going to go into them right now. I will say, if you're watching this and you need to make full-time money, regardless if it's homeschool or not, message me because I can help you do what I'm doing. But it just goes back to you being coachable and you being willing to think outside the box in order to do this. And then the 5th thing is the socialization part. This comes pretty easy to me because I am pretty social. My husband, on the other hand, if he could just be a hermit and like live in our house and never leave, and someone could just deliver everything we need to our house, he probably would. And again, this is one of my reasons why I was so adamant about not doing it, is because so many people I knew at college, because I went to a Bible college, were homeschooled, and they didn't know how to interact with adults or kids, either one. I know kids now that they don't know how to interact with adults or kids. You go to shake their hand and they're like they just have no idea the appropriate way to interact with an adult. So that's something that I take my kid on weekly field trips, libraries, museums, sometimes just to the park where there's people or not people, but usually there's people there in the summer. So you have to be willing, and again, that ties into like time and not really money, because there's a lot of free stuff you can do. If you want to do stuff with your kids and you don't have the money, go check out your public library. Our library does so much awesome stuff. But it takes time. And I don't always want to get up and like go anywhere, right? Like I to go somewhere, I have to get out of my pajamas, and I don't always like doing that. So those are the 5 reasons. And then I want to touch on 3 reasons that I think are like amazing pros of homeschooling. So if you missed any of that, just go back and watch it. There's 5 super simple reasons that you should not homeschool your kid. Your kid would be better off going to school. Now, the good news is every one of those 5 you can fix. And I would say 4 out of those 5 I had. So I had to overcome 4 out of those 5 objections. The only one I didn't was the social part, because I just like people. So that wasn't an issue. But if you're someone who like hates going out, like it's not healthy to raise your kid where they're in your house 24/7, 7 days a week, and you guys never leave. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. Okay. But the 3 things that I think are amazing about homeschooling and why I would choose it over and over again. The first one is the schedule, the no schedule, the flexibility. And I know I said that was a con. Like I said, I feel like it's a pro and a con. The reason it's a pro is because I don't remember, I read books and podcasts on homeschooling all the time. I just think it's always, there's so many good ideas out there. But who was it? I don't know. Somebody said, like, as adults, we don't always have good days. As adults, we have days where we want to do nothing but lay in front of a TV. So why do we expect our kids to be any different? Now, here's how I do that at our house. Personally, if I don't feel like schooling her that day, I usually push myself and make myself do it, for the simple fact that what am I teaching my kid if I just don't feel like doing it, so I don't? More than likely, Like, I would hope that she has a job like I have and she can work 100% her own schedule and make a full-time income from her social media where she doesn't have to leave her house. And if she has a bad day, she doesn't have to work and no one knows. But realistically, she's probably not going to. So as a teenager, if she gets up and doesn't feel great, and I'm not talking like you're throwing up and you can't go to work. I'm talking like, oh, I just don't really feel motivated. So she just doesn't go to work. Like, that's not going to fly. So I try to push and make sure that I show up for her. Now, if she doesn't feel like doing school, same thing. I try to push. However, I may modify it to, if I can tell she's really struggling with, let's say, I'm going to use math because math is something that for a while she struggled with number recognition and getting past like 15. So I may modify it to something that's a little less brain work. So that way she's still doing school, but it's not something that, you know, some days her brain's just not going to work as good as others. I don't know how to say it in like a professional, like savvy way. Some days we're just dumber than other days. Like, I don't know what it is. I feel it too. There are days when my creative juices flow, and there are days when I'm like, what the heck is 5 plus 5? Like there just is. So your kids have the same thing. And then if it's a day that we are both kind of feeling crappy, that's when I kind of take it as a sign of like, okay, let's take the day off and take the day easy. And we have the flexibility to do that. But not just the flexibility to not work. We have the flexibility to do fun stuff. Guys, we have shopping days that we plan because I like to shop. Like, my husband will roll his eyes every time he sees a shopping day on my calendar, but I'm like, you know what? I really like to shop, and my daughter likes to shop because she's also a girl. So if we have a really productive month, like we're having a great month this month, guess what we're doing the first week of May? We're freaking going to take a day and go shopping and spend a buttload of money on whatever we want because we can. Like, there's nobody telling me that I cannot. And we're going to not do it on a weekend either because those are busy for us. And that's when people like come out. If I want to go shopping, I don't want people to be around. So it's going to be like on a Monday or Tuesday and we're just going to go have a fun little girls date. And that's the same with like museums. And again, it's the flexibility to be able to do your own schedule as long as you're disciplined enough to have a schedule. The second thing is the tailored lessons. If you guys follow me, I do lots of themed days. We just had an Under the Sea day where everything was themed like fish and aquatics, and she thought it was awesome. We still did math, we still did phonics, we still did reading, but it was like a really fun day. So I think that's a really cool pro of homeschooling, and you don't have to be creative, guys. Go to Pinterest. I literally typed in Under the Sea school day, and then a bunch of ocean stuff came up because I wasn't smart enough to like, I should have just typed in ocean, but I was like trying to think of what it would be called. I didn't want it to just be like fish or octopus. Like, I wanted all of it. And then the third thing is that you can work at your own speed with your kid. Your kid is going to have so many strengths, and then something's going to pop up that they struggle with. In a school setting with it, you know, there's one teacher for 30 kids, or at least I think they're smaller now. When I was in school, it was literally one teacher for 30 kids. Like 32 was the max that they were allowed to have in a class. I know this because I went to school to be a teacher and then I taught, and it's kind of the same everywhere from what I saw. I grew up in New Mexico, we're in Indiana now, and it was like the same here as it was there. So anyways, the working at your own speed. So we started preschool, which was a lot of letter recognition, and they did not start phonics in our preschool curriculum. I tried to introduce it. She was not ready for it. She was barely ready to recognize letters. But then when it came to numbers, she kind of ran with them. So now we will be starting kindergarten probably in June. We do year round because we can take days off whenever we want, right? I'd rather take days off sporadically than a 3-month period in the summer. Which again goes to flexibility. But so we are already starting on learning how to add, but she is still, I don't want to say behind because I I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. She is still in the beginning stages. That's a good one. The beginning stages of phonics. So she's looking like she is going to be stronger in math than she is in other subjects. And that's not a bad thing. I may have a 5th grader that's doing algebra, but is still learning, you know, certain English facts that maybe she quote unquote should have known in 3rd grade. The only reason they have grade levels is because, again, it kind of has to have a standard and uniformity to move your kid through the system, which I don't think is bad. I understand, like, it's a lot of kids. But you, homeschooling your own kid, you got to work at your own pace. So it doesn't matter what is appropriate for grade level. What matters is that you are, like, working with your kid. And that's not to say if they are, like, 5th grade and still can't read, look into getting some outside help. I'm not at all against that. What I'm saying is, if your kid is a little bit behind what you think they should be or a little bit ahead, like, you can kind of tailor it and you can work with them. So you don't have a kid who's sitting there super bored trying to, you know, recognize numbers when they knew that 6 months ago, but it's in the book, so you have to do it. And you don't have a kid struggling trying to diagram sentences when they don't understand what a noun is yet. So you can 100% work at your own pace. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm not going to lie. I loved all the haters in the beginning. I think it's hilarious. People, they won't follow you. They won't comment on anything. But as soon as you put out a post or a video, they don't even know what it's about, but it's got a trigger word or something in it. They're going to be like on you like white on rice. And I think that's hilarious. If you want the free resource that I mentioned in the beginning, shoot me a message and I will send you, it's a link to, like, you get your own pack, but it's a link of just a pack. I think it's a week's worth maybe of curriculum for like I would say middle of preschool, and sit down and do it a week with your kids. See if it's something that fits you. If you guys hate it, you know, homeschooling might not be for you. And I'll also send you the link to the actual curriculum that we used for preschool. Like I said, it's very affordable because we weren't sure we were going to homeschool. We just wanted to do it for a year. So I think my story is a little bit different than some homeschooling moms that you hear because they dreamed of like homeschooling their whole life. And I was kind of the opposite. I just fell in love with it after we started doing it. So if you are thinking about homeschooling, I hope this video helped, and have an awesome Wednesday.